If you've been paying attention to the channel, you know that I got into some pretty killer sick, awesome, dutiful, whatever the hell you want to call it, fish on crankbaits, and had some heartbreaking and just heart exhilarating sessions out on the water figuring out some Florida cranking, which is kind of a oxymoron, it seems like. But I did get some questions on the vids regarding what kind of a setup I'm using to crank these fish with these shell bars, with the 6XD, 8XD, and 10XD. So this is a quick put together of what setup, what equipment that I'm using down here in Florida to catch some of those fish that you've seen in the vids, as well as lose some of those fish that you saw in the vids.
So let's start with the standard real quick.
This is a Strike King 6XD. This is my 6XD and my 8XD setup. Basically, I have a Powell Max 3D. This is an 8-foot rod. It is a cranking rod, so it has that moderate kind of action to it, a little softer tip on it. One key here, and I picked this up from a buddy of mine, I'm using, a lot of guys recommend a slower gear ratio on your cranking reels. However, I'm running a gear ratio of 6:1, so it's about a medium speed. It's like a 28-inch pickup on it. So you don't need to go super slow to crank these baits down. That longer rod gives you quite a bit of leverage, and frankly, this helps me to get the bait down there quick, get grinding on what I want to grind, and it also helps me to pick up line pretty quick if those fish bite that bait or I get them on and they start running towards me at the boat. One of the biggest keys here, and this is going to be the hardest part for Florida guys, is I would highly recommend you, and this is what I'm throwing, 10-pound fluorocarbon. It seems super light, but it's the only way you're going to be able to tap all the depth out of that 6XD as well as that 8XD. And I actually run, this is a Sunline FC Sniper. This is a very low diameter in comparison to other fluorocarbons. It does nick up, it does fray up at times after throwing it for so long because you're throwing kind of a hefty bait on it. I think this 6XD weighs like 1 ounce. So it's something you got to keep an eye on, but frankly, I can hit almost 20 feet consistently on cast, probably like 18 consistently, 19 maybe, and then 20 if I kneel crank, which is pretty solid with this guy, but it really matters what kind of fluorocarbon you're running in the sense of what the diameter of the line is. Don't try to get away with 12, 14 because you're not going to get all the juice and all the depth out of that bait. So that's my setup. 8XD and a 6XD. I throw it on the exact same setup. That 8XD, just as a note, it's a bigger bait and weighs more, but it doesn't wobble quite as hard, so you can get away with throwing it on a little bit lighter rod. So let's talk about beefcakes. What's a beefcake? This is a beefcake. If you want to have a workout and get a great arm exercise session, try cranking one of these for all day, and you'll grow some muscle. But on a side note, basically this is my 10XD setup. This is a 711 Max 3D. It's a little bit beefier of the cranking rods offered by Powell. This is a crank that I am going to run on a 5:1 or a slower gear ratio reel. It just gives me a little more power. The first time you crank one of these, you're going to be surprised because they dig, man. And they got to, because you wanted to hit like 25, 26 feet of water, but they really chug downwards. Something that I do a little bit different than I think a lot of guys is I actually run my 10XDs on 12-pound fluorocarbon, and it is a little bit risque, but I've done some experimenting and I literally lose like 2 to 4 feet if I go up to like 14 or 15-pound test. I feel a lot more comfortable about throwing it, but I'm losing that depth and it forces me to have to kneel crank the bait, or in some instances I'm not able to hit, with 12-pound fluorocarbon I can almost hit like 27, 28 feet of water. So it gets me down where fish have not seen this bait and where I know they're at, but at the same time it's kind of risky because I'm running that 12-pound fluorocarbon. But it is worth it if you're trying to hit those depths. Getting this thing down there, it does get some big mondo bites. But that's pretty much the setup. I do use the beefier, the 12-pound test, and the lower speed, the lower gear ratio reel on my 10XD. On the 6XD, it's that medium speed, 10-pound fluorocarbon, and that's about it. And that's what I've been using in the vids to land as well as not land some of those fish. So I hope this helps you out, guys, and try some cranking in Florida. You'll be surprised at the results.